Hi there, I am Amy here at the Daily Hostess, and I am coming to you with this video to go along with episode 52 of the Conversations with the Hostess podcast. It is a podcast episode all about building a tablescape, and that is why I have moved my table from my dining area to this space so that I can show you with much more natural light how to build a beautiful tablescape that has an intention of really just gathering people around your table so that you can build community and connect with other people and deepen your friendships with those people that are around your table. So I hope some of these tips will be helpful for you today. And like I said, if you want to hear the full version of this, go check out the Conversations with the Hostess podcast. It is episode 52 and it is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And this video is just a resource to go along with that because the podcast is such an auditory medium. This is a visual medium that will hopefully help kind of show you some things that I talk about in the podcast. So stay tuned and we're going to build this tablescape. Okay, so I'm back with you here behind the table and I'm going to explain how to build the tablescape just like I did in the podcast. Again, it's episode 52 if you want to listen to it, but this is a great visual medium to see how we do it. So I've got my table here and I talk about in the podcast figuring out if your table is something that you want to cover up with a full tablecloth or something that you want to let it show and just use a table runner or something kind of in the middle. I really love our antique pub table that we got here in England, and so I love to let it show. So we talked about the table in the podcast, and now we're going to build the tablescape for the table. And I say to start with a foundation piece, and in this case I'm using a table runner. I actually somewhat match it with my outfit today. But I'm using this kind of blue, light blue, linen colored table runner, and I'm going to put it right in the middle to use as my foundation piece to build the tablescape. And this can be anything. It can be a tablecloth, a table runner, a scarf, a blanket, a rug, a towel. It doesn't matter what it is, but you need some sort of foundation piece, and that's what I always start with. So I'm using this table runner, and I just put it in the middle. This one is a little bit short for my table. It doesn't go all the way to the end. So I tend to kind of scrunch it up in the middle to make it a little bit more just right in the center, and it gives it a little bit of texture because it's kind of scrunched up together. So that is my foundation piece, this table runner. And then in the podcast, I talk about using a centerpiece and the combination or equation or formula of a centerpiece being flowers plus candles. So that's what we're gonna do today. And this is gonna be kind of a spring tablescape. That's why I'm using this kind of lighter blue color. And then for my centerpiece flowers, I am using daffodils, which are super springy and really pretty and bright and great for a tablescape. So I'm gonna put them right in the middle. I have this kind of blue mason jar base. I also have a couple other little arrangements that I'm going to use as well throughout, and I like to do things in odd numbers. I think it gives a little bit more balance and variation. So one centerpiece or three. So I have these other two small little vases of flowers that I'm going to put just in the middle but kind of spaced evenly around. So that is our centerpiece formula, the flowers. Now we're going to add the candles. In the podcast I talk about what I'm binging, and that week of the podcast I was binging these candle holders. They've got this kind of gold circular base and then this really thin candlestick part that holds the candle, and the best part is that they unscrew from each other and then you can store them flat, which is really, really handy. But these make a really great addition to any tablescape, and I will use them here throughout our tablescape. I like that they're really thin because then you can still kind of converse across the table, but they don't take up they're not super bulky, they don't take up a whole lot of space. You can still see everybody around the table. So then the next part of the tablescape is just continuing with candles. So I like to add little votive candles throughout the table. These are just some little gold votive candle holders, and I have some flameless battery powered tea lights inside. And so I place those kind of all around, and you want to take into account people that are going to be sitting all around your table and kind of the view that they're going to have. So maybe walk around your table and see if things are spaced evenly or if it's in a place that makes sense depending on who's sitting at that spot. So we've got our flowers plus our candle centerpiece on our tablescape. So we started with our foundation piece, we've added our centerpiece, and now we're going to move on to place settings. Okay, for place settings, I talk about in the podcast that I really, really love layers. And you're probably gonna think I'm a little bit overkill, but I stack a lot of things at each place setting because I just think the variety and the layers add a lot of dimension and interest to the tablescape. So I always start with the charger. For spring, I'm using a wicker charger. So I always place that down in front of each of the places at the table, and then I start layering on top of that. And this is something that I talked about in the podcast as well, is just kind of figuring out the spacing on your table because you want to make sure that you have enough room for everything. So today, in this case, the table runner is a little bit wide and it's kind of getting in the way of the placemats. So I'm just going to continue to kind of scrunch it up and move it around so that I can fit everything and that everything kind of lays nicely still and there's room for everything around the table. So we're going to put our first layer of our place setting down around the table. Now for our second layer, because this is a spring tablescape, I like to keep things kind of bright and airy looking, so we're going to use another charger. Before I add these chargers, these are just some white melamine plastic chargers that I'm going to add on top of the wicker to kind of amp up that kind of natural element in spring and new growth. I have these circular leafy garlands that I've used in the past on the table, and it's just something that kind of adds a little bit more greenery to your table and makes it a little bit more spring-like. So I add that down on top of the wicker placemat, or the wicker charger first, and then I add the white on top of that, and so you get a little bit of this kind of green leafiness around and underneath that white charger. So I do that at all the places and add the white on top. And the best thing, and the reason I love using chargers so much, I talk about in the podcast, is because they make cleanup a lot easier. You know, if there's a spill, you can just wipe these off. You don't have to worry about things getting all over your table or all over your tablecloth because they help protect it. This is especially helpful whenever you have kids and young kids like I do. They help to keep the table a little bit nicer and cleaner, which is great. So we've got our place settings now. We've got our first charger, we've got a little bit of extra spring in there with those leaf garlands, and we've got the white plastic charger on top. You don't need all of these layers, but like I said, I just like to continually layer everything up and give a little bit more height, dimension, and interest to the table. So at this point, you can really go a lot of different ways. I talk about cutlery. You can add your cutlery and glasses if you want to. But I also talk about napkins and how napkins can add a lot of interest to the table. So that's what we're going to do next. So for this tablescape, this spring tablescape, I am using these blue kind of checkered napkins. They're cloth napkins. I think I got them at Target several years ago. They're nothing super expensive. They're, you know, pretty reasonable, and I've used them for years and years. And so what I like to do is just kind of set them on each place setting. And then at this point, I would typically add like my dinner plate or a salad plate or a bowl or something like that on top, and then you can continue stacking your plates that way. Now I only have 4 of these napkins, so I am only going to put them on the 4 place settings in the middle of the table, and if I were expecting 6 guests, then I would just use probably plain white napkins at each of the outer head of the table place settings. So I like that the blue of these napkins kind of ties in with the vase, it ties in with the table runner, and it adds a little bit of interest because it's a little bit of a different shade, it's got a little bit of a pattern in it, and it just makes each place setting a little bit more fun and more spring-like. So that's the tablescape. It doesn't take long, it doesn't take a lot of stuff, and everything I've used here are things that I've kind of built over the years, things that I use over and over again. It's not a one and done thing, so you don't ever feel like you're wasting money if you have to purchase things for your table because you know you're going to use it over and over again. It only took a few minutes, and that's how we built the tablescape. We used our foundation piece, added our centerpiece of flowers plus candles, and then built our place settings using lots of layers and adding napkins. Again, you could put cutlery and plates and glasses out as well. But I hope this was helpful in showing you a little bit more visually what I was talking about on the podcast. And if you ever have any questions about how to set a table or you need ideas for a tablescape for a certain party theme or a certain dinner party that you're having, happy to help. I would love to help give you some ideas, so feel free to reach out and contact me on Instagram at The Daily Hostess or on my website, thedailyhostess.com. And you can also see a ton of other tablescapes there. I've done a Tablescape Tuesday series on my blog for the past 6 years. So there's lots of different tablescape ideas there, seasonal ones, holiday ones, and party themed ones. So you can get lots of really great ideas, or follow my Tablescape Pinterest board. There's also a lot of fun ideas there as well. Again, I hope this was helpful, and I would love to know your thoughts. So leave a comment and let me know what you think.